My name is Sherry Scull. I was born in Altoona, but have lived here all except a year and a half of my life. My mother's family has been from this community for several hundred years. I graduated from Pemberton High School, then went on to BCC and have quite a few credits from the College of New Jersey as well, but I didn't finish. I work in the schools as a substitute, thinking, I'd do that while I paid for college. I was going to be the manager of a Sears store, was my thoughts. Got hooked on the kids, ended up getting a job as a paraprofessional basic skills aide, and worked in the schools for all over a total of 41 years. So my husband Harry's family has been from here. His great-great-grandfather came here in the early 1820s, 1830, to work at Hanover Furnace. So his family has a long history in this community as well. We had 3 children, Jolene, Adam, and Ryan, who all grew up in this community as well. Well, one of the things that got me interested in the history of this community was my grandmother, who always talked about, we'd ride by somewhere and she'd say, oh, there was a glass factory there. She had worked in the Parapole building when they were making stockings and had worked at Evergreen Park at one point. So she always talked about history. Her grandparents' property was taken from them in 1920 when the federal government came in and made Camp Dix. So she always felt whatever was there belonged to her. So she had quite an interesting attitude about that, and she had grown up on what it was Lemontown, the town of Lemontown, which is over by where Garden Terrace was. Her father was a farmer there on property owned by somebody else. He was killed when she was 3 years old by a freight train in Pemberton in the middle of the night, and her mother remarried, so she stayed right in that area, went to school first at the New Lisbon school that was behind the big yellow house. Well, I don't think it's yellow anymore. The house on the 3 hills. There was a school behind there. And she was the first generation that went to Little Red. And there were 4 generations. My mother went there, I went there, my children all went to Little Red. So we were kind of hurt when it closed down. When I was young, most of the roads were dirt roads. There wasn't a big population until around the 1970s. It kind of boomed with Fort Dix. So we have a lot of military and military-connected families here, which I'm very proud of. My father was actually military, and my aunts all married military men, and I've been very involved with the veterans organizations in the township, supporting them. Basically, I think that the difference it used to be mainly a Piney population, and there is a culture to the Piney population and in military, and I think we basically accepted people. We didn't care where they were from or what color they were or religion. As long as they were a good neighbor, Pemberton pretty much accepted it. And growing up, I didn't think that much about it. I just took it for granted. And at a high school reunion, I think the 20th reunion, one of my friends from high school was the head basketball coach at Penn State, and he was here. Another one was a vice president for 3M in Minneapolis, and another one was the chief administrator at a hospital in Pittsburgh. And they're all black men, and we were talking. And it amazed me because they said, we thought this area had a lot of prejudice. This is the least prejudiced place we ever lived, and it made me stop and think. I've always known that all areas were not like ours and accepting of people, but it made me really appreciate it when those three men all said the same thing. You know, and they were very successful men. I think the Piney population is minimal, but there still are enough of the families here that, and mainly it's more of an outside thing. My husband graduated in the top 20 of his class, but there was no way he was going to college and sit in a building all day. He's worked outside, he's done very well, but it's kind of they hunt. Deer season's very important to them. You know, they go to the cabin a week, no women are allowed, which I used to find a little offensive, but now I'm like glad. And very close-knit families. You know, I had lived in an apartment in Pemberton Borough when I was first married, and the lady that owned it was a teacher at the high school, Mrs. Kendricks, and she said to me, "Sherry, the other people think that you and your husband aren't friendly because you don't hang out with them." And I said, "Well, we have family here, so any extra time we have, you spend with family. And family is very important. You take care of each other." My grandmother was very much the type of individual who instilled in all her kids, you work, you own your own way, you don't take relief, as what they used to call welfare. And there were a couple of Piney families who took advantage of that, so of course you had no use for those families. But a lot of it has to do with outside, where they picked berries. My mom picked blueberries and her siblings so they could buy school clothes. Thankfully I didn't have to do that, but I did like to pick berries. They did cranberries in the fall. They would pick pine cones and things in the winter for the florists, so the vines and whatever. So mainly working outside kept them happy. The farm on Junction Road, Bobby Reeves. The Reeves family has been here forever. His grandfather, Bobby's grandfather, had started. They had farms there. They had a farm on going towards 4 Mile Circle, and they owned farms out what's now the middle of Lebanon State Forest. I'm not calling it anything but Lebanon State Forest. And but my grandmother's and her husband worked for the Reeves family. 4 generations worked for the Reeves family. They continued that, you know, pruning the bushes in the wintertime and whatever had to be done. So they were there on Junction Road as well. Well, in reality, we might ride through here once in a while, but we really weren't that involved with Whitesbogs. And back in that time frame, Mr. Darlington's family still owned the whole property, so it had not yet developed into what we have here today. And I think this is very valuable to the state and to our community that we have Whitesbogs. So mainly the Blueberry Festival. And we would come, and I'm also a member and founder of the Pemberton Township Historic Trust. So we would come and set up a table, and as I said, we did the bus tour, but we would also, sell local history books and bring artifacts from the community so individuals could see them. And that's basically how I got more involved with Whitesbogs. And I've always felt there should have been more of a connection between our historic trust and Whitesbogs, that we're very similar in our nature, and we're very similar in our goals and what we want to see happen. But unfortunately, we lost our museum that was the train station. And right now our stuff is in storage. So until we can find a new home, the Historic Trust, still we run usually 2 train shows a year, but that didn't happen. But I do believe Whitesbogs is extremely important. And should be supported by our community. Back in 1996, when we were having our 150th anniversary, and there was a committee, and we had a huge parade in Browns Mills. We had set up the firehouse as a museum and had a lot of different things on display in their local history. And Michael Tam was very involved with that. And Ken Kay had been one of the chair people. And Adrian Leonard. So Michael Tam had asked me to be involved with maybe setting up a historic group. Well, I was a little leery, but I said, okay, if it's to benefit the community. So we did set up the Historic Trust. We are a nonprofit organization, and we did a lot of things. A lot of school trips would come to the train station. We had a lot of outside groups that came in. And we also, one of the things I set up, Mary Hutchinson, who is a retired principal from the district, she was in curriculum at that point. I worked in the district, and we wanted to set up a museum so all the fourth grade children could come through. So the township agreed, so we had the BMIA, and we set it up. We on one weekend, and then we ran all the fourth graders and any high school, middle school teachers that wanted to take a field trip could come, and we ran them through the museum. And Ken Kay and his friend Kevin were artists out of New York City. Kevin has been a producer on one of the Madonna videos. Ken is an artist, and he sells art to like lawyer offices and that type of thing in New York. So very artistic, very particular. So everything had to be just right. So it actually, when people came in, looked like a museum. And we had a lot of fun doing that with the kids. We ran every year we'd have a different theme, and we would have a poster contest, and then kids could come, and they got awarded prizes for their posters if they won. So it involved the community. It got parents out with their kids, which helped to also teach and enforce in some of the grown-ups the broad history of our community. So it was a lot of fun. And then we had the museum was given to us to run the train station because they needed a welcome place. So part of the grant to restore it was you had to have a welcome to the Pinelands thing. So we had all those pamphlets and that. And we ran the museum for quite a while. Governor Whitman came down and cut the ribbon. It was really quite a historic event in our community. We had the high school band playing and kids riding their bikes. Governor Whitman rode her bike down the trail and back. So, it was very important in our community. And we did do a lot of, the schools would come, senior groups from all over. Whiting, all over would come in for tours. So Mike Tam and his wife would operate those type of things. Terry, when he retired, I was still working. We did a lot of that type of thing. So, and we have things, and one of the reasons I haven't given up is because we set the trust up so that anything donated to the trust became the property of Pemberton Township residents. And that's one of the reasons we were so upset over the trains, because they were the property of Pemberton Township residents, and we had to get rid of them, and then we were closed down. That's a whole other thing. But it's just a shame because it was so valuable. We had people coming in from all over the world to see the train station, and we had a sign-in book because that would help us get grants. And people were England, France, China, whatever. They would come in and they loved it. And it's just sad that it's gone. It was a nice draw to our community. And then we tell them, well, you could go eat pizza here, or what, they'd ask where they could go. We'd send them to Whitesbog. We did a lot of that type of thing. They wanted to know if there was anything else in the area, so we'd send them up here.